And Chair, when we get started, when we go through introductions, I'll just go down the list by agency. This way we'll go through introductions and also confirm quorum.
Fantastic. Sounds great. So we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the Thursday, October 1st CTAC meeting. We'll begin the meeting with introductions. I'm Julie Procopio, the chair from the City of Escondido. And we can run down the list of attendees by agency.
And then
Marcos,
go ahead.
if you could turn unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you have one. When we go to your agency, we'd appreciate it. Thanks so much. So City of San Marcos, I didn't hear you, Ed. Are you there?
I am here.
Oh, great.
Ed Dean, City of San Marcos.
Fantastic. And do we have anyone from the City of Carlsbad? Oh, yes.
Yes, Hossein Ajide, City of Carlsbad.
Great, fantastic, right in time. And the City of Chula Vista? I don't see anyone here from Chula Vista. Okay, and Coronado?
Ed Walton with the City of Coronado is here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And do we have anyone from Del Mar? No one from Del Mar. El Cajon?
Yeah, Mario Sanchez present.
And Encinitas?
I thought I saw Ed.
Yeah, he's here. You'll have to
Oh.
unmute yourself, Ed.
I'm here. Good morning, everybody. I don't have a camera, so good morning. I have a bright smile on my face. Happy to be here.
Morning, Ed. Imperial Beach.
Good morning. This is Juan Larios, City of Imperial Beach.
Good morning, Juan. And is there anyone from La Mesa here?
Yeah, this is Mike Kennard with the City of La Mesa. I'm here.
Great. Welcome, Mike. And Lemon Grove.
Hi, good morning, Mike James.
Good morning. And let's see, National City.
Jose Lopez, National City, present.
Great. Fantastic. Oceanside. Let's see anyone from Oceanside. Okay, Poway.
I thought I saw Melody.
Yeah. Looks like she disappeared. I wonder if she was having some connectivity problems. Okay, well, we'll give her a minute to try to log back on. And San Diego?
Gary Chewy, City of San Diego, here. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and I see that Melody is saying she's here and she can hear everyone.
Okay, perfect.
Having some trouble with her microphone. Fantastic, Gary. Let's see, Santee.
This is Carl Schmitz with Santee.
Great. And anyone from Solana Beach? Is Mo here? I didn't see him.
I haven't seen him.
Okay. And anyone from the City of Vista?
We did see Matthew Atterbury. In fact, he's a new member. More of an announcement. Tim Shell retired.
Oh, wow. Okay. Congratulations.
Good morning. I'm here, Matt Atterbury.
Matt Atterbury. Welcome, Matt. Welcome to the CTAC. And then the County of San Diego.
Good morning, everybody. Bill Morgan with County of San Diego.
Great, good morning. And then I saw that Frank joined us, so the City of Chula Vista.
Good morning, Frank Rivera at City of Chula Vista.
Good morning. And any other members that joined since we started the introductions that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves? No? Okay. From Caltrans, I see we have Bing here. Thought we had him.
Yeah, I thought we did too.
Is there anyone else here from Caltrans? I didn't see anyone else. No? Okay, we want to go ahead and introduce SANDAG staff.
Yeah, so for SANDAG staff, we have Sue Alpert, we have Phil Traum, and then in attendees, we have Richard Radcliffe, and obviously we have our IT team, and then that's it. Unless I miss anybody, please raise your hand. Okay.
All right, well, welcome everybody. It's good to see those of you that have a camera and hear those of you that don't. We'll go ahead and jump right into our meeting. We will start with approval of the meeting minutes, which are in the agenda package. If everyone could take a look at that. And while you're doing that, if as we progress through the meeting, if anyone has anything that they'd like to say, you can turn your camera on. That'll signal to us that you want to speak. Otherwise, you can list that in the chat. I don't think that attendees necessarily have the ability to raise their hand. Is that correct, Alex? I don't see that.
No, this is an
just
an
mention
action
in
item.
the chat that you'd like to speak,
Correct.
or obviously you can unmute yourself if you want to speak
Correct.
during the progress of the meeting.
Point of correction here, Chair. We're
Yes.
highlighting here the approval meeting July 2nd. This should be the approval meetings of the September 3rd.
Yes, September 3rd meeting. Did I say July 2nd?
Oh no, it's in the presentation.
Oh, I see. Okay,
So-
I see it now. Yeah,
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Our agenda packet is correct.
Correct.
We do have those meeting minutes in our packet. So I'll entertain a motion as soon as anybody's had a chance to take a look at that and ready to make a motion.
Chair, this is Ed Dean, City of San Marcos. I move to approve the minutes.
Fantastic. May I have a second?
Ed Walton with Coronado Wood second.
Great. So we will move forward with the vote.
And I am going to go down the list. City of Carlsbad, Hussein.
I was not able to attend last meeting.
Do you want to abstain?
Yeah.
Okay. Frank Rivera, Chula Vista.
Yes, approve.
Ed Walton, Coronado.
Aye.
Mario Sanchez, El Cajon.
Yes, approve.
Ed Wimmer, Encinitas.
Approve.
Chair Procopio Escondido.
Approve.
Juan Larios, Imperial Beach.
Approve.
Mike Kern, La Mesa.
Abstain.
Mike James, Lemon Grove.
Yes.
Jose Lopez, National City.
Approve.
Melody Rocco, Poway.
Approve. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, Melody. Ed Dean, San Marcos.
Approve.
Carl Schmidt, Santee.
Abstain.
Matthew Atterbury, Vista.
Abstain.
Gary Chu, City, San Diego.
Approve.
Thank you. I still don't have Solana Beach, but we'll move on to Bill Morgan, the county.
Approve.
Approve.
Okay. Thank you. Attendees could raise your hand if you want to make any comments, but otherwise, I think We have noted approval of the meeting minutes for the September 3rd CTAC meeting.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is public comments, communications, and member comments. There's a couple of announcements. First, I wanted to announce that a focus group has been assembled to initiate discussions and obtain some early input from the local agency stakeholders regarding the current state of CTAC and SANTAG with SANDAG staff. The idea was to provide insight to SANDAG staff on how to improve engagement and focus, and to consider potentially reframing so that we can bring the best value to CTAC and SANTAG agencies as well as the region. So the discussions are still really at the very preliminary stage. We've just had one meeting, and we expect to follow up. But we will examine some opportunities within the group, and then we will bring those recommendations back to CTAC and SANTAG in the next couple of months for discussion and consideration. So, and then Alex, you also had another announcement?
Yeah, we have another announcement. So I issued an email last week. If you've been up to date on our 5 Big Moves visions, we made several presentations to the TC, our Transportation Committee, also our board. But what we're going to start doing now is, I mentioned, I think, in our September meeting that we started initiating some one-on-one discussions with the local agencies. So we're going to be reaching out to all of you guys, make it more one-on-one discussion with planning and and your staff and your public works staff as well. But other than that, we're also, the email that I issued, we are conducting a joint working group meetings. And I believe I mentioned to hold a date for Thursday, October 29th. So we're still working on kind of the agenda and the structure of that workshop. So you're going to be hearing more information about that. And basically, the idea there is that we're going to bring the different working groups together and highlight a little bit more details from your, the individual working group perspective to get some insight and input. And that's it, Chair Julie.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Were there any other public comments or member comments? If you'd like to speak, you can turn on your video, or you can raise your hand. Ed?
Hi, yeah, Julie, can you tell me who's on the subcommittee?
Yeah, Alex, do you have the list of the members? I know that there's, obviously I'm a part of it as the chair of CTAC, and the SANTAG chair is also a part of it, but I think Alex had assembled a group.
Yeah, bear with me.
And I guess while you're pulling that up, Alex, if any of the members of CTAC have specific recommendations or comments or thoughts, I'm happy to discuss that with you offline. We're obviously just talking about ideas as to how we can improve the coordination between the two committees, as well as with SANDAG, and how we can kind of serve the region better. So it's just really a very open discussion at this point. So if anyone is interested in, having some input, I'd be happy to talk with you offline.
And Ed, just to additional context to that is we just wanted to get a sample group of both CTAC and SANTAG members, just to help us flush out kind of this approach a little bit better. So when we come back to all of you guys, we have a more structured, but like Chair Julie said, happy to take an input right now. The members that we reached out to, we try to get kind of a representative section of the region. So it included Hamid from the City of Oceanside, obviously our chair, Julie Procopio, Duncan Hughes, Subir Awada, Mario Sanchez, and Bill Valley from the City of Chula Vista, and Minji May from the City of Santee.
All right, thank you.
Great. Any other announcements or comments?
Chair Julie, I don't see any hands up.
Okay, thank you. So seeing none, we will move on to item 4, the first report on our agenda, the 2021 Regional Transportation Improvement Program update. And I see that Sue Alford is here to give us an update on that item. Good morning, Sue.
Morning, Julie, and members of the CTAC. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a status and mention a couple of items. But back in April, we asked you guys to program projects for the 2020 Transnet program of projects, and those were programmed in amendment number 14. And on last Friday, the board adopted that program of projects and approved amendment 14. So those Transnet funds are now available, but federal funds will still be dependent on federal approval of the amendment. However, we did that in lieu of updating the RTIP due to the safe rule. But
Sorry to interrupt. This is Ed Dean.
Yeah.
The PowerPoint I'm seeing is from item 4 of last month.
That's true, and I didn't have a slide.
Okay.
Who's running the
Sorry to
power?
interrupt.
Kendall, I'm sure you're grabbing probably this from the September meeting.
I don't think so. I'll check it out. I thought it was in this current folder. One moment.
Okay, well, we can talk about it anyway.
Go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, sure.
Just
So
confirm.
when the state made the decision to go ahead to proceed updating the FSTIP, we asked our software vendor to move all the projects from the Transnet program of projects over to the 2021 RTIP, so we wouldn't have to ask you guys to reprogram. But that was those were programmed back in April, so we recognize that cities may want to make some changes. So on September 18th, we sent out a letter, which is what's in your agenda packet, inviting agencies to make changes to the projects programmed in the 2021 RTIP. And we would like to have these changes made before we release the RTIP for public comment, before we release the draft. So once the RTIP is released for public comment, we'll only allow minor changes during the public comment period. So this is your best opportunity to make any changes to the 2021 RTIP before it's approved in February. Also, there were 3 cities that had overestimated their carryover, and once we had actuals in, you're now programming more than is available. So we need to those 3 cities to make adjustments to reduce the carryover that's programmed to meet fiscal constraint requirements. So the resolution that you submitted for 1814 is still valid for the 2021 RTIP. I've received that question a couple of times. But if you are changing Transnet during this period, we would require a revised resolution. So I also wanted to emphasize that these are funding changes only. Modeling is complete, so we can't have any more changes to scope, limits, or schedule for capacity increasing projects until the next conformity amendment. So we anticipate that the board will release the draft RTIP in December 2020 on December 11th and adopt the final RTIP on February 26th, 2021. So after that, we also intend to open a new amendment probably on the day the RTIP's approved, so February 26, 2021. So best time to make changes is right now, and we invite you to contact us to send back any projects that you'd like to update. And we will probably do one more admin mod before we adopt to the 2018 before we adopt the 2021. So if you guys need the admin mod, contact us. I think we're going to do this on an as-needed basis. So let us know if you have something really urgent that you have to get done in the next couple months. And then finally, the 2021 RTIP webpage is available. There's a link in the agenda, and that includes the 2021 amendment schedule, so you can also plan. Our intention is to run an amendment every quarter, alternating between an admin mod and a formal amendment. So that's on the schedule there. So that's it for the RTIP status, and I just wanted to see if there was any questions.
Hi, Sue. This is Hossein Najee, the City of Carlsbad. A quick question. We have a project, is a road widening, really short segment on El Camino Real. It's about 0.2, 0.3 miles that we are adding a lane from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. The project is moving forward faster than we expected, and we were wondering if we could change the schedule. You just said because of the capacity increasing projects and the modeling issue that cannot be done. But I'm just wondering if this project is such a short segment that would not impact your regional modeling. Is it possible to change the schedule for bringing from 2023 to 2022, or we have to wait for your next amendment? Thank you.
Okay, so we did evaluate the projects you guys submitted, and some of them we classified as capacity increasing and some as we classified as exempt. So I'm not sure which exact project that is, but if it's classified in RTIP right now as capacity increasing, you can't change the schedule. If it's not, then you can update the schedule and move it ahead. So you can call me later or have Jonathan check with me and we can look at that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other comments or questions from members? Nope, seeing none. Thank you so much, Sue. We appreciate the update.
Okay, thank you.
And I also do not see any comments, Chair Julie, from the attendees.
Great, thank you, Alex. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5, which is the 2021 Regional Plan Development Update on Local Streets and Roads Network efforts, excuse me. So I see we have Phil Traum here, and Alex, I think, is going to be helping provide the update on this.
Yeah, and we'll hold off on this as part of the presentation, but Phil, if you could, I have you as item 5A.
Great, thanks, Alex, and good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to provide some background about this effort that we're essentially kicking off this month. We're looking to update our local streets and roads assumptions for the regional plan, and this is something that we do every 4 years. It's been about 6 years now that we had extended our plan deadline for this cycle. But essentially what I wanted to give you a heads up, and we'll be working with SANDAG members as well, looking for a point person at your city to help collect and send to us the assumptions for local streets and roads. So that's capital maintenance and operations in your capital improvement programs. The reason this is that we want to make sure that we're aligning those assumptions with the projections of local streets and roads revenue funding in the plans. We're kind of just matching all that up. So we'll be sending out, it's basically a survey form, an Excel survey form, and we'll send that out by email. We will also provide the survey that you all completed, all of your jurisdictions completed in the last cycle, just so you have a reference point of what was submitted. And then we'll work over time to make sure if there's any discrepancies between the projections and what you're assuming, we'll work with you to kind of understand those. Typically there are not. Usually we go out 30 years in the plan, as most of you know, so there's quite a bit more revenue. We just need to make sure our essentially next 10, 15 years match, and in as much as you have farther out projects that they would match with the 2050 assumptions as well. So that's one piece of the puzzle. We're also using this as an opportunity to update the regional arterial system. And I know there's a tie-in with what Alex will present next, but just wanted to share that's kind of the reason why we do that, is that's an ongoing system that's in the plan that relates to the RTCIP funding from Transnet. That's the development impact funding. So we have some criteria. And we also ask that it's always a good opportunity with every plan cycle to update that if you have any assumptions in your local roads network, which would now be included in the regional arterial system or deleted from the regional arterial system. So just want to make sure it's an opportunity to align those assumptions. So that would be the ask from our regional plan team in terms of the local roads specifically on your assumptions and your needs. So I think that ties it up. Again, we'll be sending out an email with the surveys and just kind of trying to find a staff member in your team that could support and respond to the survey, and providing you with as much assistance as you need. Like I said, giving you the old survey that was completed from your jurisdiction, just so you know what it looks and feels like. So, and we're hoping to wrap that up by the end of November. So we may circle back next month depending on how this is going. But I think with that, and I don't know if Alex, if you want to field any questions on that specifically, or if you want to do your kind of B item component of this.
No, any questions? Yeah, I'm open to fielding questions at this point for this particular item. Chair Julie, I don't see any hands up or anybody on camera.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Phil. We appreciate the update. So Alex, we can move on to item 5B then.
Right. So really within the context of updating our sort of our regional arterial network from a vision perspective, the first item that you heard is it's more on your existing RAS network or the information that we use for identifying and projecting those revenues or expectations like Phil alluded to from a maintenance and operation. So, but the other component in terms of our vision is that as part of our visioning, and you've been made aware, and obviously we're going to get into more discussions with the one-on-one agency presentations and the follow-up workshop that we're planning on October 29. Just like we developed our complete quarters concepts, our transit leap concepts, one of the elements under the complete quarters that we also are proposing what we call our complete quarters regional arterial network. And one of the elements behind that is that, maybe to say up front, is that we want to remain the existing RAS network intact because we recognize that the underlying component behind that is that it's part of your RTCIP program, but also it drives a lot of the existing Transnet program elements. So we're proposing this new complete course regional arterial network, where really the focus here is that we want to make sure that we provide and focus on technology investments that support and advance the 5 big moves. For example, one of the key things that we're considering under this network is that we want to focus on improving operations safety at the intersection level, but also looking at other technology that help advance essentially mobility along these key arterials. Like what we did with the other components of the 5 big moves, we based it on, well, we first started with using the RAS as the initial sort of network. From that, we looked at data. For example, we looked at some of the key elements that is considered when we review the RAS, when you guys provide updates. We looked at VMT, we looked at the connection to major centers in terms of employment. We looked at access to the freeway system, and we also looked at ADT components. And then in addition, next slide, please, Wendell. We also layered the existing adopted bike network on top of that. So that's still within this proposed complete course arterial network. And the idea here is that we want to make sure that we capture, in the spirit of the 5 big moves, kind of a multimodal system. Next slide, Wendell. So I'm just going to go through some slides of what we envision in terms of really what this network is intended to support the 5 big moves. So ideally here is that we know that the focus here is on technology. So we want to look at technology from a complete quarters perspective, but really focus at the regional level. So we're looking at, for example, at technology that'll help us manage and prioritize transit, other shared modes, manage curb space, improve pickup and drop off, urban deliveries, but also really adapt to supporting active transportation and micromobility services. Next slide, please. And then we just use this example in the past during our vision with our TC and our board as an example. So one of the driving factors is technology. So for example, you saw that before, but the idea behind technology is that through smart intersection concept that you're going to be hearing just a little bit today, that we're going to kick off, or we are actually kicked off with a SANDAG last month, is that we recognize that, you know, there's a lot of new technology components at the local arterial street level that improve safety, but also improve operations. But there's a lot of technology there that provides us with understanding multimodal awareness at the intersection level. So this is one of the components that we're going to be pursuing under this regional arterial network. With that, sort of a follow-up step as part of this, I'm going to be issuing to all CTAC members, and I'll work with Ellison, to all SANTAG members, the actual spreadsheet of that network that you saw in the presentation. And I'll be following up with an email, and we want to provide the opportunity for all of you guys to provide us with input or suggestion if you want to add, and really we could work through that process. Any questions? And that's pretty much the essence of the discussion with CTAC today. I see Ed.
Ed, you have a question?
Yeah, Alex, I'm just wondering if SANDAG has a vision on how this gets rolled out, this connected street technology. I mean, you showed the intersection in Chula Vista. So how does that go from what's there now to what's shown in the picture? Is that I'm sorry, El Cajon. Is that an El Cajon function, or is that a SANDAG function? And you know, how does SANDAG envision it, you know, ending up there?
No, that's a great question, Ed. I'll speak to sort of the process where we're actually underway. And then Phil, if you could speak to kind of the process from the RTP level. So right now, one of the things that we're doing just to get these concepts rolled out at this point, obviously the slide that you saw from El Cajon is just an example, but what we're doing now is we started a regional smart intersection concept of operations. So I know we participate a little bit with some State Route 78 corridor project team members to capture and help define what that smart intersection concept needs are. And then we're going through discussions with all the CMC project partners, and we're happy to sit down with individual agencies to capture some additional needs. So we rolled that out with the SANDAG, but essentially that's one of the kind of initial elements that we're getting started on that, Ed. So really capture what the functionalities that you would wish to capture in the smart intersection concept. Once that gets done, we do have somewhat of a goal in terms of the next step in that process development is developing and working with local agencies or determining with SANDAG level, do we develop system requirements, and then that gets into the project development process. The other thing too is that part of the agenda that we have today is we are actually kicking off our regional architecture component. So that will speak to more the technical elements behind putting together all the interfaces, understanding the data flows between all these systems, including smart intersection functionality. So we're going to get that started today. In fact, that's part of the agenda today, but we'll be coming back to all of you guys to help us define all those pieces. That's just really kind of getting, you know, if you think about it from the traditional project development process for capital infrastructure, these are sort of in the technology field, these are really kind of the initial study documentation to get that project development process going. And I'll go ahead, Phil, from a more RTP vision component, if you could speak to that.
Sure, yeah, and I think there's obviously a major tie in there. We would look to fold all of those assumptions, including the local streets and roads assumptions too, like that I previously mentioned, into the plan as we present a phased transportation network with all the revenues and projects, and then all of the background sort of policy levers and nuts and bolts that go into a long range plan. So I think in the past we had assumed technology as an appendix that perhaps this gets more folded in. We have sort of more of an implementation, a structured implementation program, as Alex referenced. So we would look to sort of see that this would become more and more detailed as we provide the draft, develop the drafted plan, and then put that out for public review. And we're looking at that as sort of a spring, summer activity, obviously, you know, commencing on drafting the plan shortly internally. So hopefully that provides that a little bit more detail there. But that's kind of our process, and ultimately the plan would be adopted next fall, and that's to make sure we meet our air quality deadlines with the feds and have a valid plan. And this is also a sustainable community strategy, so ensuring that we meet our statewide requirement for greenhouse gas reductions per capita. So that would be all coming through for proposed adoption around the sort of October, November, sort of this time, I guess, next year. But again, draft coming out the late spring, most likely.
And one thing to add, just add maybe that, you know, is the idea is that behind kind of the more, right now we're getting input from all of you that are really involved in operations. So that's really the focus here behind the ConOps and this and really the ITS architecture. Ideally is that as we proceed kind of as sort of the temporal timeline in the midterm or as we start developing the RTP, the idea is that if we have those documents ready, set aside the RTP funding or how things flesh out at that point. If we have those documents ready, then we have kind of a leg up for possible funding opportunities with the feds or even CTC. And that's a huge sort of, like I said, I kind of reference sort of the traditional capital infrastructure process, but the ConOps or having the ITS architecture in place for, at least for these type of technologies, it's a huge lift when we could state that we have a ConOps in place and our regional ITS architecture is updated.
So I have a comment, or I guess a question. I'm glad to hear that there's some consideration being made for regional arterial roadways in the RTP, you know, and more of an analysis and evaluation of this new technology. I wonder if there is also potentially the ability to look at priority RAS corridors as a part of kind of solving the overall transportation, regional transportation problems or challenges that we have. In the past, I think the RAS roads have been kind of left to the individual jurisdictions to handle, and I think that's led to a little bit of compartmentalization. But is there a way by which we can look at our regional challenges on those RAS roads, you know, roads that maybe, you know, cross multiple jurisdictions, and try to incorporate some solutions in the RTP for those priority corridors?
No, that's a great question, Chair Julie. Maybe I didn't articulate it as well. We did take a stab on how we developed this network, and we did start with the RAS, and we understand sort of the relevance of the RAS, and like you described. But we did take a stab by starting with that, but then we also took a stab and aligned it with our 5 big moves. So ideally, there's some relationship there. For example, one of the key components of the 5 big moves is improving regional mobility. And for example, some of these roadways support our mobility hubs concepts, or support kind of proposed improvements for our next generation rapid, which transcends multiple jurisdictions. And we also based it on data. And so we did take a look at, you know, which of these roadways, obviously ADTs is a reflection of that characteristics of that facility. So we did take a look at ADT data. Another component is that a lot of these regional arterial, what we're proposing is it serves as maybe the critical link between a major employment center and other locations within the region, like jumping on the freeway and then traveling to another major employment center, Julie. But with that said, I mean, you'll receive the listing of these arterials that are being proposed. And if you have any comments or suggestions to add, or maybe if you think that maybe another one should be included, that's the level of input and feedback we need from CTAC members.
Okay, and so if I understand it, then there'll be we have our RAS roads, right, that are generally important. Is there also going to be some additional information provided by SANDAG, kind of prioritizing those corridors based on ADT? Because I think that's where the challenge is, right? Is, you know, we've got a lot of RAS roads and they're all very important, but some of them need attention more than others.
No, that's a great input, and we'll take that into consideration, and I'm sure that's part of the process. And yes, it's a short answer, yes.
Okay.
If that's something that CTAC would like to consider, we'll look at that, and they maybe come back as a proposed approach.
Yes, I personally, I hope that there's support from the rest of the members. Would love to kind of see that data as it relates to the regional arterials, and be able to, you know, as a group, look at that prioritization list and understand, you know, where our region's, you know, focus needs to be based on that data. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions or comments?
Chair Julie, I don't see any comments or hands raised by the attendees.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you for the update on that. We will move on to item 6, which is the development of the Regional Transportation System Management and Operations Plan. And I see Alyssa is here to provide that.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here.
You can move to the next slide. Thank you. Alex, do you want to jump in or should I just keep going?
No, go for it.
We are here today to present our Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations Plan. I think Alex has alluded to it a little bit, and we got that great question from Ed that I can talk a little bit more about the smart intersection concept. If you go to the next slide. This project has been funded by a Caltrans planning grant. Our major deliverables are the Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations, or TISMO plan. This explains the people, processes, and tools that are needed to support regional planning efforts like the 5 Big Moves or the CMCPs. In addition, we're putting together a toolkit to help implement TISMO in the region. That could include things like a project charter example or templates that you could use that are actionable for each of your agencies. In addition, we're putting together 2 concept of operations that explain a little bit about how the smart intersection system will operate. That's the concept that Alex was just explaining. And then also the next OS, which I know you've heard about in previous meetings. If you go to the next slide. So this TISMO, as I call it in short, is really the glue that holds all these planning efforts together. It links the 5 Big Moves and the CMCPs, the regional ITS architecture, which Stacy is about to tell you about, and really provides a basis for an umbrella for how they all come together and how they all operate. I want you to be clear that, you know, as we talk about TISMO and how it relates to these other planning efforts, we are all coordinated together. We are all meeting and talking to each other. So I don't want you to think that anything is siloed here. We have a plan to go to each of the CMCPs throughout the next several months and gather data. And the same as we're working with the 5 Big Moves in the regional ITS architecture to really support those 3 people, processes, and tools for all of these planning efforts. Next slide. Now, as we talk about this glue or TISMO, it sounds like it's you know, a very important big thing. And it is an important thing, but it's not necessarily that big. It's not that much of a shift. Really what we're talking about here is how do the users experience the transportation network from end to end of their journey and from any mode that they're using. And how do we make that a smooth operations, increasing safety and efficiency along the way? We are talking about how we can successfully, for a TISMO project, it doesn't end when the punch list is finished, when the construction crew walks away. How do we assess the operations in the project and the performance measures over time to tweak the project to make sure it's constantly providing the benefit that we're seeing? It's also, you know, it could be something big like a large project like the smart intersection, but it could also be something much smaller. For example, it could be as simple as making sure you have a phone contact list of your partner agencies. So when there's a problem, you know exactly who to talk to. It's those little things that break down the silos that we're used to operating in that really is TISMO. You go to the next slide, please. So what we've done on the TISMO plan so far, as Alex alluded to, is we've used the 78 North County stakeholders as a little bit of our test bed. That was a group that was already put together, made of it's a diverse set of stakeholders, including Caltrans, local agencies, NCTD, Transit was represented as well. And we talked to them, we went to some workshops, we gave them some surveys, we did some interviews to understand what is happening right now in your agency with regard to TISMO. What are the opportunities? Where do you see the next big challenges? And what can we do to help? As part of this, we did what's called a capability maturity model assessment. It's, you know, fancy word for these stakeholder interviews where we looked at the dimensions that you can see on your screen here. Institutional, operation, and technical are the same as the people, processes, and tools I was just referring to. So we looked at the culture of the agency, what collaboration is going on, what's the technology that's being used. And if you go to the next slide, what we found from these particular set of stakeholders is, first of all, the groundwork has already been done. I've done a lot of these CMMs throughout the state, and what was really great about the North County stakeholders is that without not one exception, every agency was willing to work together on operations. Sometimes there's some distrust between agencies or you don't understand what the benefit is, That is not at all what we saw when we were talking to these agencies. So that's great. That's the foundation that we need to move forward. A lot of the agencies are already coordinating together on existing operations. That could be something as simple as a bike path project or on signal operations. There's also a lot of technology in the corridor. Now, part of these agencies have already worked on the I-15 ICM, so they have some experience with TSMO already. But there also are, there's a robust communication network. There is a lot of data being collected in the corridors in the North County area. And that's a great foundation for TSMO. Now, the next slide are some of the opportunities that we have. Now, currently, there is a lack of specific policy or procedures that say you need to do TSMO. It's kind of an extra addition that people are doing just because they should be doing it, but there's no policy in place that supports it. Obviously, all of your agencies are dealing with challenges like staffing and dedicated funding for these type of improvements. That's probably a region-wide challenge. Now, as these agencies are collecting data, they have Bluetooth readers, they have access to big data, there's a need to understand, what do I do with all this data? How does it really help me? And how do I use that to help operations? There's some, an education piece or some guidance that's needed with what do I do with all of this information I have? And there's a need for a more formal communication structure. When those incidents happen or major changes happen, people don't always know who to talk to. Sometimes they call a PIO when that might not be the direct person to talk to. These opportunities that we've found with the North County area, what we're doing next with the TSMO plan is we're going to come to you and we're going to come to all the CMCPs and a variety of other stakeholder groups to fill out a similar survey to see if what we have found with the North County is similar to what you're all experiencing. Now, I know in the city of San Diego, you're already coordinating operations with Caltrans and Signals and sharing that responsibility. I know in the county, you might have different concerns because you have to deal with some rural transportation issues, which might be a little bit different. And that's what we want to find out in the next couple months. What are your needs and what are the people, processes, and tools that we can find that can support those needs? And that's really our focus in coming to you today and over the next several months with our TSMO plan. We'll be sending out a survey. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions, if anyone agrees with these or disagrees, or you have anything you want to say about what we found in this particular set of stakeholders. And I'm afraid I can't tell, so someone else will have to call on people if anyone's raising their hand.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Any comments or questions about that?
I have a hand raised from
Okay.
Jose Lopez.
Hi, Jose.
This is Jose Lopez, City of National City. One of the questions and comments that comes up on this item, as you're mentioning, is a boilerplate agreement across cities neighbor each other. Or similar, we all have similar things where we have to overlay our road. We want to pick up that portion that's right next to that other city. For us, it can be the county or Chula Vista or city of San Diego.
Right.
This boilerplate agreement across or MOU that is already accepted by our city attorney's office across the board from all of the sister agencies here to facilitate some of this work instead of every time we go into a project that is neighboring with each other and we need, it's the constraint that we run into. So has that been something that you guys have come up with to facilitate multi-agency coordination?
What we have developed so far is a draft project charter, which might be similar, but we are putting together a full toolkit, as I mentioned, and that's a great suggestion for another tool to add to that toolbox to have this draft agreement for data sharing or for operation sharing. I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Any other suggestions for tools that you would like access to? Okay, any other comments before I move on?
I don't see any other comments, Alyssa.
Okay, great, we'll move on. Next slide. So what we found in the capability maturity model, there are standard measures that we take. When we were looking at the 78 corridor, the North County corridors in particular, this area is operating what we call managed. Now that's the second layer in terms of TSMO. It's not the most basic, but the optimized is a little bit more, where TSMO is more finely ingrained. It becomes part of the day-to-day business model. And that's because what we're seeing right now is that the coordinations that is happening right now is project-based or ad hoc, not necessarily something that's part of the everyday state of affairs. Not right now. Very few or no agencies are automatically sharing data with their partner agencies. And data could be performance measures, it could be signal timing information. With the exception of the I-15 ICM, there isn't much of that happening. The performance measures are being collected to some extent, but they're not necessarily being utilized to change the operations. But a good thing, in addition to the willingness to work together, is that there's a lot of foundation and technology which can help take these things to the next integrated level. So as we develop the surveys that we're sending to you and other partner agencies and the CMCPs, we'll be taking this into account and assessing where we are as a region. Next slide. Now, another focus of the TSMO plan is this concept of operations, which I talked to you about earlier. The concept of operations is a deliverable in the systems engineering process. The systems engineering process is a best practice for planning technology projects. You can see at the top is what a traditional process would be like, a planning kind of a PAD construction type project, a capital improvement project. Now for technology, we don't quite look at it exactly that way because technology changes so much over time. And we don't want to select our technology in the beginning of the process and then have it obsolete by the time we deploy. So we follow this concept called a systems engineering process. Part of that is you start with the regional architecture that Stacy's about to talk about. That's the technology framework for everything. Then we do assess the needs, and we're going to be sending out a survey to understand what your needs are as a region. And then we use those needs to develop this concept of operations. That explains how the system is going to operate from each stakeholder's point of view. We are developing a concept of operations for the next OS and for the smart intersection system. And this will feature user scenarios on how these systems can be used through major incidents, if there's a major evacuation, just under normal operations, how to maintain a smart intersection, those sorts of things. And that's what we'll be developing as part of this. We'll be developing that through November with a draft in December and finalize it in January. And that's what we're looking at as our next steps in this project. And then if you go to the next slide, this summarizes just what I said here. We're going to be coming back to you with a survey to get your needs so we can help define the vision and the goals. In November, we're going to be doing the TSMO plan and the operational scenarios. So we'll be looking at the use cases there. And in December, we'll have the draft TSMO plan and the next OS and smart intersection concept of operations for your review. And talk about those people, processes, and tools that will help implement those. Any questions? Comments?
Thank you, Alyssa. And I do not see any hands raised. Chair Julie, or see anybody putting up their camera, bringing up their camera.
Okay. Well, it doesn't look like there's any comments.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about this idea. Happy to be on that 78 corridor and get the opportunity to have the early input, but I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say on that. Thanks for your time, Alyssa. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the development of the Regional Intelligent Transportation System Architecture Update.
And I'll wait for the presentation slide to come up by Kendall. Before we introduce this item, I'm actually going to speak to it, but I do have Stacy on hold as part of our IBI team on board, and she'll be able to field any questions as we present this item.
Great, thank you.
I can see her. Okay, So really, if you just go to the next slide, Kendall, thank you. So really, the idea here is and you've heard a little bit of sort of the technology component, either through our Complete Corridors Regional Arterial Network that we're proposing, and then Alyssa came in and talked about our TISMO efforts. So really, the foundation behind is that there's a lot of technology that we're really focused in our vision. But we also understand that a lot of you also work on, technology implementation for your local program, local streets, or even programs. So I know a lot of you are looking at sensor technology, looking at improving your traffic control elements that drives your intersection operations, and these are just some examples. But the idea here is that, in order for all of these components, to be coordinated not only within your local agency perspective, but also across other agencies, but even at the regional level. It's really predicated upon effective coordination between organizations, all of you, with Caltrans, ourselves, and it's really based on institutional and really at the technical level. And that's really what the ITS focuses on, is at the technical level. How do we provide a roadmap? And that's really the essence of why we're doing an ITS architecture. We follow a standard practice, what we call the National ITS Architecture Framework. And really that framework provides a way by which we would put and examine all the, for example, the functional data flows, the technical integration components that need to come together so that we can make a reality of implemented technologies. And when I say technologies, the idea here is that the framework breaks it down to specific strategies, whether your traditional TSM or TDM strategies or any other strategies, but really bound by technology as a foundation. So the idea here is that through that framework, it provides a holistic approach for designing and further implementing a regional sort of structure from a technical perspective. And ultimately, it is a federal requirement for agencies that use federal funds for technology projects. And really, if you could go to the next slide, window, please. And then Alyssa kind of alluded to sort of the overall process here, but really maybe the new sort of reference that I want to show here is this is how kind of when we start thinking about technology and how the ITS architecture is implemented within the context of a regional planning process. So for example, we have the regional transportation planning process, and this could include, for example, the vision that we're working through, your local circulation plans or general plans when you start talking about technology at your individual agencies. And then you go through this process where, based on funding or programming, you start really developing the project development, you start that process. And then ultimately the operations and maintenance behind those projects and you start evaluating the benefits of those projects. And so it's a really circular process. And really where the ITS architecture comes in is by way of the framework, it provides really an approach where you consider not only the individual, how the individual interfaces between the technologies or the projects, but also considers, in order to work across or standardize the interfaces, what agreements need to take place. So that's really that layered approach that looks at, for example, we call the enterprise sort of communications, where you look at standards, you look at communication protocols, you also look at agreements, but you also look at data, how it's transferred between these systems. And then ultimately, then you do it through these, what we call the RADIT tool. And this based on the National ITS architecture, sets the high level vision, but then the SETA tool kind of gets down to the weeds and the flow. But then part of that, it's also, as Alyssa alluded to, within that project development process, once we have the concept of operations reports done, and then you have the regional architecture completed, it really begins that system engineering process again. And that's really the existing practice for implementing technology projects along the way. Next slide, please. So while we're coming to all of you, really the idea here is that there's specific components or tasks that we've undertaken. And one of the first things, for example, when we get started, and this is what we get started, we need to understand who do we need to start talking within your agency representatives in terms of identifying the key stakeholders. There's going to be some initial data collection to either confirm, and I'll speak to this last bullet point here because we did start with CTAC in our sort of a previous regional architecture effort, but we want to confirm that we have some initial data collection that we collected at that point to reaffirm that the information, your systems that we collected and confirm that that's reaffirm that that's correct. Then we're going to go through an extensive process where we're going to identify really the interfaces, the functionalities, the plan interfaces based on meeting our 5 big moves vision, based on your proposed projects that you're looking at. And then really takes us to kind of the implementation process where once we define regional architecture, we're going to start looking at a defined sort of implementation roadmap or ITS architecture implementation plan as well. Following the ITS architecture, providing a sequence of new projects, and then also part of this project, we're also going to be developing a regional architecture framework that allow us to give us an understanding and something tangible how we actually use the architecture itself to implement our own projects. So all of that requires your input. So, and this is why we're reaching out to CTAC. And I mentioned earlier that we did start an ITS architecture update in 2019. It was brought to CTAC. And at that time, we did collect a lot of baseline information, either through workshops or one-on-one discussions. And the reason we held off on sort of proceeding with the ITS architecture at that time is because we did start working on our vision, which is the 5 big moves. So all we're doing right now is reinstating that effort so we can complete that and include that in our regional transportation plan. Next slide, please. I believe this is the last slide here. All it is just the schedule. And I mentioned sort of the touch points with CTAC and maybe the ones that I just like to highlight very, very high level. You have task number 2. I mentioned that we did collect a lot of information. So what we would like to do is the IBI team is looking at the information that we collected, but also come up with a process where we need to develop a proposed approach and based on the information that we collected, but based on the visioning that we're proposing and based on the information that in your own vision, how do we provide an approach so then when we start developing the ITS architecture, defining those elements, we could work toward that approach. And then task 3 and 4, that really speaks to bringing all the relevant and local input from all of you, confirming that information, and the idea here based on the architecture framework and based on our vision, what is that, what are those interfaces, what are those views, the standards, what are the functionalities that we need to bring together, really customize it to what we're posing at the region, but also make sure that we identify your individual needs. And then really the last task here is I mentioned that we are going to be doing a product. So the idea here is that we want to make sure it's a product that's tangible. So it provides guidance and a mechanism for local agencies and all stakeholders, including, Caltrans and ourselves. So when we start thinking about, any ITS projects, that the framework, it's going to be a web-based system. You'll be able to go through that system. It'll give you some guidance. Again, this is from the technical perspective on the interfaces. With that, so there's various touch points with CTAC, and those are highlighted here. This is really just our draft schedule as we proceed with this project. Again, we're just kind of rolling it out with all of you, but we'll be following it in more detail with the proposed dates of these the stakeholder inputs along the way. So we got to make sure we're just on our side, we're maintaining flexibility to meet a very, very tight timeline. Like I said earlier, the reasoning is because we have to have this as part of our RTP. With that, I'll open it to any other questions. And also, again, like I said, we have our IBI team to field any questions, and Stacy on holds from our project manager from IBI.
Are there any
Sure.
questions from the group? I can't see if anyone's turned on there.
Yeah, I don't see.
This is Ed from Encinitas. Real quick question. I think what you're saying, and please correct me if I misunderstood, I think what you're saying is on the project schedule, this is going to be very fluid, but you're trying to finish it by February of 2021.
Within 6 months, Ed. So, yeah, February, March, no later than March. So we're going to be coming back to you with a lot of these when we start developing the architecture itself, but also we're going to be reaching out to you individually to make sure that we got some of the initial information that we received last year is correct.
Thank you.
Alex, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plan then, or have you already formed some sort of a committee of local agencies members, or are you planning to just use CTAC as that committee?
In fact, this is the first sort of regional-wide meeting, Chair Procopio, so we're open to any suggestions at this point. We haven't had our initial stakeholder kickoff meeting, so we're open to, if you guys want to participate in that stakeholder working group, but we do know that CTAC is going to be a key stakeholder in this process.
And I think from my perspective, I'm not the best person personally to be a part of that committee. And so, there's other folks in my office here who would provide better input. So from my perspective, it'd be, but I mean, obviously CTAC I would like to remain engaged and understand what those, what the drafts are. And it looks like that's the plan. But yeah, when you're ready to set up those meetings, obviously, I guess you'll reach out to each of us and we can let you know who's the best to participate in those.
And maybe what I'll do to all CTAC members, we have a listing of the folks that participated during that baseline analysis and initial efforts, and I'll share that with the CTAC members, and feel free to add or suggest any of your staff members. Then that'll really give you a starting point for this stakeholder process.
This is Ed from Encinitas again. I think you're going to have all these slides available to the CTAC members. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll issue these slides, correct. Yes.
Are there any other thoughts or input from the group?
I don't see any hands raised, Julie Procopio, or any cameras on.
Okay, well, great. Thanks so much for the update on that. We will move on then to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Caltrans updates and announcements. And I see that Bing is here.
Yes, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, when you did the roll call, I wasn't quite sure why you weren't able to hear.
Yeah, we knew you were here, but we couldn't hear you.
Okay, all right. I'm going to touch on a few items. So for the emergency relief program, there was a governor's declaration associated with the Valley wildfire. The initial damage estimates were due to our office yesterday, September 30th. I wasn't sure if any agencies actually were affected by this wildfire, but in case you do, please contact our office. Next item is, again, inactive projects for invoices. Please submit the invoices in a timely manner. FHWA continues to be very aggressive, and they do send me frequent notices to ask the agencies to submit invoices. Next item is the Highway Safety Improvement Program Cycle 10 call for projects. The applications are due in just over 2 weeks on October 19th. Please be sure to submit those on time if your agency decides to apply for any of those funding. Next item is the CTC ATP app. I'm sorry, not the applications, but the allocation requests. There are a number of projects that need the allocation request submitted to our office by tomorrow, Friday, October 2nd. Just for your information, I will very briefly go over some of those projects and just point them out. Let's see, City of National City, that's the National City Safe Routes to School pedestrian enhancements. City of Escondido, the Escondido Creek Trail bike path improvements. SANDAG Inland Rail Trail, City of Vista segment. Another project is City of Escondido Juniper Elementary bike pedestrian improvements. And then we have a project, City of Encinitas, the Santa Fe Drive corridor bike and pedestrian improvements, City of San Diego Imperial Avenue Bikeway, City of National City El Toyon Las Palmas Regional Bike Boulevard, City of Carlsbad Avenida Encinitas Coastal Rail Trail, and then a couple of projects in Imperial County. I'm sorry, this is SANDAG. So yeah, so those are the 10 projects that we need the allocation paperwork submitted as soon as possible, but they are due tomorrow, Friday, October 2nd. And that is the last CTC meeting in December. If your project does not get on the agenda by the December meeting, then the funds will be lost, and Caltrans really is unable to assist in that regards.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Bing?
I do have just one more item. I'm sorry, I was going through the list here and
Sure.
just didn't want to go through every single one of them. The quality assurance program looks like we are pretty much updated with all the agencies, but 2 agencies are coming up where you need to renew your QAPs pretty soon. That's SANDAG. The QAP expires in March 2021, and City of San Diego, your QAP is expiring in May of 2021. So you may want to start preparing the renewed QAP. And I think that's all the items I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bing. Any questions for Bing?
Chair Julie, I do have a hand raised.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, it's Mario
Mario.
Sanchez, City of El Cajon. I had a question for Bing. Could you give us an update on the ATP Cycle 5 applications?
I do know that the applications were due about 2 weeks ago on September 15th. So I believe they are under review right now. And I'm sorry, I don't remember quite the exact date, but I think there should be some kind of initial decision in November or December.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, anything else for Bing? Okay, well, thank you so much, Bing. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
We will go ahead and move on to our last item on the agenda, which is the roundtable on COVID-19 and local agency updates. We've talked about this in each of our last couple of meetings and taken this as an opportunity for agencies to share with others what they're doing, what's changed, any insight anyone can provide. Does anyone have anything that they can share with the group on updates regarding COVID-19, any changes to your agencies or things you found have helped address the pandemic?
Sure, Julie, I'm going through the list, see if I see any hands up or anybody who wishes to speak. Turn on your camera. I don't see any volunteers here, Julie.
No volunteers. Okay. Well, I will say that outdoor dining has become all the rage. I know a lot of other cities have seen that, and I think folks are so interested in getting out and trying to experience some form of normalcy. We've seen a lot of folks willing to sit on asphalt pavement and have lunch. So it's been quite interesting to see that. And from our agency's perspective, we, are continuing. Our city hall is open to the public. I know other folks. Are there any other agencies whose city halls are closed to the public still?
Yeah.
City of,
Lisa, our agency is still closed to the public.
Okay. Any others?
City of Encinitas, yeah, City of Encinitas is still closed to the public.
Yes.
Nice.
City of El Cajon, we're close to the public, but our lobby is open for planned drop-off or any inquiries. That's about it.
Same thing with City of Carlsbad.
I'm sorry, Hossein, I didn't hear you. What did you say?
I said the same with City of Carlsbad.
Okay, your lobby's open, but not really open to the public, serving customers.
Not open to public. The plans are basically drop outside the lobby.
Okay. Any other?
I should mention, I'm sorry, Julia. I should mention that Encinitas is virtually 100% online. So virtually every single permit can be applied for online and issued online. So that kind of mitigates the need for in-person presence.
Great. And Frank?
Yes, Chula Vista, our lobby, limited hours. We prefer drop-off outside the lobby doors, and as much as possible, everything you can do on the internet. But generally just our lobby for the engineering planning departments. That's the only thing that we have access to the public at this time.
Okay. Great. I don't know if other agencies experience this, but I know that our agency definitely had some, we developed a bit of a backlog in building permits. It seemed as though folks were not as, ready and prepared to submit those online or to, use a digital process. We had a lot of folks who were just used to the old way and they wanted to return to that, and they were willing to wait until they could do that. So I don't know if others have experienced that, but it's been a bit of a challenge. Things are still pretty strong with respect to development. Has anybody seen any substantial changes with respect to the amount of development, the type of development, the impacts on, from our perspective, it's been busier than ever, but is everyone experiencing the same?
It's been busy in Chula Vista. This is Frank.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, same as El Cajon. We're busier than ever.
Yeah. Ed?
Same in San Marcos.
Okay,
We're pretty busy.
good.
Same in Encinitas, extremely busy.
And Coronado's the same.
Great. Good.
I think that since construction didn't really slow down, this is Frank again with Chula Vista, construction didn't really slow down. We gave the contractors an option to shut down and they chose to keep working. It's the same with the tenant improvements and developers. So everybody just continued on with construction.
Great. That's good to hear. Economically speaking, you know, I think that's good. Good for us. All right. Were there any other thoughts? Anyone wanted to share anything else related to COVID-19 before we move on from this topic? Okay, hearing none, we will, let's see, move on. The next CTAC meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 5th at 9:30 a.m. And if there's nothing further, we will go ahead and adjourn. Everybody please stay safe and take care.
All right. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Chair.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Okay, bye.